Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. In November 2022, ChatGPT was unleashed on the world, and since then, it's shaken almost every industry to the core. Even according to Henry Kissinger, ChatGPT heralds an intellectual revolution. An incredibly high-functioning AI tool from tech company OpenAI, ChatGPT uses information it's learned from training data to follow prompts or instructions and provide a detailed response. And the impact on business and the way we work is going to be enormous, says productivity expert Donna McGeorge, whose latest book, The ChatGPT Revolution, offers practical tips on how you can simplify your tasks using the chatbot. A simple one is having it help craft an email. Donna explains to Chris Ashmore.
So let's say I have to send a difficult email about a complaint to a client, and I need to make sure that it's sufficiently empathetic to their quandary, but also defending our position because we're not necessarily in the wrong. That's a really challenging email to write. So you go to ChatGPT and you explain that. I've got a client, they've got a complaint, it wasn't our fault. I want to be empathetic to them, but I also want to defend our position. Write me an email, and it will. Now, you probably can't send it raw, but it'd be a great first draft as an example.
Any other things that ChatGPT is good for in business?
So many. Emails are just the beginning. Yeah. So I use it to help me write articles. I use it to summarize information. So if someone sent me a big old report, I can summarize information. You could voice record a meeting and then transcribe the voice recording, load the raw data up into ChatGPT and say, summarize this into actions for us.
Wow.
Basically anything that's about writing. So imagine you've got an intern sitting next to you or an assistant or something like that, and you say to them, hey, can you please think about 10 blog articles as an example that I could write on the topic of managing capacity? And so they do. And then they say, okay, can you now research 2 or 3 of those and get them to about a 50% readiness for me to edit? Now, that would probably take a human half a day, right, I would think.
Yep.
ChatGPT can do that in around 30 seconds.
Goodness. Is that going to take people's jobs away, Donna?
I don't think so. I think our jobs will change, but it's no different to saying, did Excel take people's jobs away when it happened, right? So all of a sudden we don't have as many people pushing calculator buttons, etc. But Excel didn't take people's jobs away, but people who didn't embrace Excel might have lost their jobs. So it's the same thing. I'm not worried about AI taking my job. What you should be worried about is someone who embraces AI taking my job.
Right. Now, you've written 10 books. Number 11 is on its way, and that's about ChatGPT. Got to ask this question, Donna. Did you use ChatGPT to write your book?
Yes and no, right? So the easy answer is, of course, why wouldn't I? But it didn't write the book. What it would do was the same way as if I had a human sitting next to me, I'd say, hey, I need some ideas about how you might use ChatGPT around the house, as an example. Can you give me half a dozen? And so it would generate half a dozen ideas, and I'd go, oh, great, that's inspiration. And then I'd go back to doing my writing. I think people imagine that when you're using ChatGPT to write a book, that you basically say, hey, write me 35,000 words on how you can use ChatGPT to manage your business and life admin, and then you just sit back filing your nails while it just generates all that content. It's not at all like that. It's more around a kind of no different to how I might have researched and read articles in Google in the past. It just summarizes all those articles for me that normally I would have read, and then I have to still attribute appropriately, make sure it's got my voice, all those kinds of things. So I think if anyone picked up my book, they'd probably recognize it's been written by a human, but absolutely this human was helped by having a little editor sitting by his side the whole time.
Writing aside and business aside, how does ChatGPT help us in our day-to-day things?
I don't know how many of your listeners sometimes have the issue where they come home and the first question that's asked is, what's for dinner? And then, of course, if they've had a really busy day, they try hard not to scream at their family at that moment. So just to kind of give you contrast, if I was using, say, Google and said, hey, give me vegetarian ideas, it will throw up approximately 59 million links to potential articles about vegetarian meals. If I go to ChatGPT and say I've got a potato, some mustard seeds, bit of rice and some leftover spinach in the fridge, what can I make from that? It'll give you one, and then you can say, give me 3 more. And not only will it give you recipes, it'll also then generate a shopping list for you to take to the supermarket if you did need extra stuff. I use it I'm going to Portugal later on this year. I've only got 10 days and it's helping me with my itinerary. I don't have kids, but if you had kids, there's a couple of ways. And I know it's a bit controversial, the homework thing. So I think it's at your peril that you don't teach kids how to use it, because otherwise it'll just go underground and they'll all be using it inappropriately. So let's be open and use it. So yes, it can help you answer questions, but you have to be critical. So here's one of the downsides of it. It's sometimes incorrect, right? It spits out facts and data and quotes and stuff, and they're just not right. And so you still need to do a bit of a critical eye on it.
How would you know if it's correct or not?
Well, as someone who writes books, I have to check. So I asked it to give me a quote from someone famous about how we need to create more space for what's important and productivity shouldn't just be about getting stuff done, words to that effect. And it gave me this beautiful quote, and it said, Winston Churchill on this particular date on a radio interview. And I went, I better go check because I want to put a reference in the book. Well, the thing never happened and he never said it. So what it does is, because it's scraped all this data, it's just picked up bits of information from all over the place and bundled it together in a logical sounding sequence, but the sequence was wrong. Now, it's getting better. It'll get better as it learns, but that's a bit of a catch. So with homework, your kids would still have to check their sources. They'd still have to make sure that it's accurate. But one really good thing I saw recently about using it was for testing. So ChatGPT, I'm studying the Russian Revolution right now. Ask me a series of questions to test my knowledge, right? So now you've got a study buddy.
That's a good idea, yes. For someone who hasn't used it before, where do they go to access it, and how do you suggest they go about using it in the beginning?
So the first thing, it's free. So you go to a website called open.ai. If you just put that in the browser and hit enter, it should bring you to your ChatGPT homepage. You're going to have to set yourself up with an account and then just ask it a question. Like, I don't know, what have you always wanted to know? I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice is it's not Google. You don't just go in there and say, how was the universe created? And then there's a whole bunch of links that you then follow. You can go in here and say, I'm interested in how was the universe created. I'd love to share this information with my 7-year-old. What can you tell me? It's a chat. You begin a conversation with it.
That was productivity expert and author Donna McGeorge. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Chris Ashmore, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.